Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? My aunt was dating an unemployed dude for a while. He was staying in her house rent-free. They got married and were getting ready to go on the honeymoon when the new husband tells her he's not going because he has to take care of his plants at the house. Big fight. Aunt goes on the honeymoon with her sisters instead. She comes home and tries to kick him out of her house. He refuses to leave. She tries to get the police involved. Dude is live streaming on Facebook how he is being trapped in his own home. Police tell my aunt there is basically nothing they can do. Can file for eviction after a divorce. Dude gets to live in her house with his precious plants for like 3 months until everything legally gets worked out. Paralegal. A couple got divorced over a cat. Wife called cat Snowball because of white fur and only wanted the cat to eat wet food or chicken breast. Husband called cat Lily again because of white fur and believed it should only eat dry food. These two argued for a year over custody of the cat but did not give a crap about their human kids aged 15 months, 4 years, and 6 years old. Colleague handled a case where money was not an issue but the kids were. Neither parent wanted them. My mom worked in abuse and neglect counseling and juvenile justice. There are a lot more cases like this than I'd care to admit. Parents divorce and neither side wants a kid. Some of them are that neither side wants a kid but will fight over another kid. If ends up totally screwing them over because they have to live with the fact that their parents didn't want them. My aunt had a case where the wife had glued all of the outdoor hoses together so he wouldn't spend more time washing his vehicle anymore. When the glue didn't work she just cut them all up. When he bought new ones she filed for divorce. My 90-year-old client, the husband, and his son retained me to initiate divorce proceedings with his 88-year-old wife. They'd been married 60 years. The wife had recently taken to beating him with his own cane because their daughter poisoned her into thinking he was hiding money from them. The battle came down to husband and son versus wife and daughter. At their first court appearance, my client showed up in an old 1950s style pinstripe suit and fedora. He was a farmer his whole life, and this was clearly the only suit he owned. He was such a meek and lovely old gentleman. I had to pass my client on to a new lawyer midway through the proceedings because I accepted a job in a different country, but I understand the divorce was eventually granted. Not a divorce lawyer, but I had a friend whose parents divorced for irreconcilable differences over time spent playing EverQuest. In my game design class, it was referred to as Evercrack. I've been aching to tell this story for a while. So this girl I went to school with marries this rich guy from Ohio. She moves in with him and they seem to get along well. 6 months later she files for divorce. Up to that point, all I've heard from her was how good it was going. Anyways, it turns out our buddy had a fetish for going off on urine. He asked her to urinate on him in the tub. At first she agrees to it as she thought it was a one-time thing, but he kept asking for it more and more. She tried to decline it respectfully but he wouldn't get any of the hints. She finally used the tub being too small as a reason. Next day she comes home with 24 construction guys and their heavy equipment tearing the bathroom walls. A week or so later, they finish up the bathroom. She comes home to a sign left on the fridge with a note to drink up. She got some watering to do. I don't know what exactly she put down as the official reason in the paperwork, but that was definitely her biggest reason to walk out of that relationship. Oh, I forgot to add, he also wanted to bring a horse to do the deed as well and at times asked her to make animal sounds while she stood on top of him. She comes home to a sign left on the fridge with a note to drink up. She got some watering to do. The thread above this made me sad but this one picked me right up. Dying of laughter. My grandfather's brother was a judge who presided over state issue marriages from time to time. One couple he married returned 6 months later to confirm the wedding and end their trial marriage. When he thusly informed them that there was no such thing and that they had been married for 6 months, they subsequently broke up. That sounds nutty, but if you believed you so when they told you trial marriages were a real thing, the betrayal could very easily end a marriage. My dad was a divorce lawyer. He had a client who wanted to divorce her husband for 2 reasons. 1. He did not have enough hair on his chest. 2. He did not drive fast enough. Keep in mind this was in the 70s when chest hair was a bit more important. Crap, yeah. It would have been embarrassing to show up later to pool party and your man not having a decent chest bush. I didn't like her anymore 2 days after being married. In sickness and in heath, till disinterest do you part. She was kidnapped in Mexico and he refused to pay ransom. Eventually her family managed to pay and she was left on the side of the road. It is not outrageous as in petty, but outrageous as how absurd that is. Honey, I love you, but we agreed to save up money so we can purchase a house. Your ransom would really set us back. I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a nightlight but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school co-workers were his best chums, and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. He had an argument with the new in-laws during the wedding and moved out at around 5 AM during the first night. Man, I was going to say that our client was served divorce papers for sending a couple $100,000 overseas in a scam, but dang, you guys got better ones than me. Dang, you are too stupid to stay married to. I was a legal assistant when this case came in, but this lady divorced her husband of 2 months because he got her an iPad case for her birthday instead of the expensive jewelry she wanted. Failed exorcisms. Client had an inner ear condition that caused chronic vertigo, but symptoms could be treated with medication. Husband was an evangelical who was convinced his wife 1 had become possessed and that her vertigo and general crankiness with his methods were evidence of demonic possession. 2. The medication she was taking was enabling the devil to hide inside her. And 3. The only proper recourse was exorcism. He would hide her meds until she got dizzy and then try various methods of exorcism. This included sweating it out, put under blankets while incapacitated and locked in a room full of space heater, freezing it out, pretty much the reverse with AC, fans, and bags of ice. Surprising it out, he would jump out and scare her like it was the hiccups, but instead of yelling boo he would recite the Lord's Prayer or Psalms. The final straw was that he tried to surprise it out of her by pushing her down the stairs when they were heading out for dinner. Note, this guy was some type of executive and they still went out to dinner after the stairs incident. She asked for the divorce at an Applebee's that night. I have often tried to picture that conversation, as she was adamant that he was a total sweetheart and never acted out of malice or anger. That one's just sad. My uncle has schizophrenia, and my grandaunt tried to convince my grandmother, his mom, to have an exorcist come instead of letting him stay on his medications. It's probably one of the reasons my grandmother stopped talking to them much. It pains me to think he could have gone through all of that if he'd been one of my grandaunt's son instead of my grandmother's. My client put his wife in an assisted living facility based on a misdiagnosis, the medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. While in the facility, my client shocker started dating another woman and methinks began using hard drugs. He used a loot of money on both of these things. She eventually got off the medication and got better. Suffice to say, she was not happy about what had transpired. The medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. Oh my god, that is freaking horrible. I'm an intern but the judge I work for used to do divorce work. He has some crazy stories but this one is probably the most outrageous, though the divorce was pretty justified. Every morning this couple would sit in the bathroom together while one of them had their morning dump. One would sit on the toilet and the other on the rim of the bathtub. This particular morning the wife was on the toilet and husband on the edge of the tub. They started to argue about their relationship, so the wife reaches down, pulls her tampon out and flings it at husband. I'm told the tampon stuck for a brief second to his forehead before sliding off. He filed for divorce that same day or the next. At first I read this as one shoots in the toilet while the other shoots into the bathtub as in they are both pooping simultaneously and rock paper scissors for who gets to use the toilet. I was so concerned. I had some friends get divorced because she legit hated Dale Earnhardt and he legit hated Jeff Gordon. Wasn't the reason but did happen during the course of the divorce. Neither side would follow the court orders. When they had to go back to court they were fighting over a pistol and the man's grandmother's bowls. I assumed for weeks that these bowls were some sort of heirloom or expensive china. When they finally brought the bowls in to swap they were freaking Tupperware. My douche cousin told his wife she had 3 chances to give him a son. Daughter was born first, strike 1. Son was born second. Then they find out the boy can't eat gluten. So my cousin divorced her and has made 0 effort to see his kids. Not me, but a friend. My mum has divorced her husband because his mother still coddled him at age 40, with his consent. They lived with his mother, common in Asia. By coddle I mean that she would walk straight into their room after his shower and powder his back for him. They couldn't lock their bedroom door because his mother would come in as and when she wanted. If they locked the door, she would knock repeatedly asking what they were doing. LOL, what would they be possibly doing? Playing poker? My client was the outrageous one, so my heart went out to his poor wife. He had OCD which manifested primarily financially, so he made their lives a penny pinching heck. Examples: he was obsessed with avoiding unnecessary driving, wear and tear on the car, gas expenses, so he cut the whole family's hair at home and never let them eat at a restaurant or go to the movies. Weirdest of all, he kept 1 toilet paper roll on him at all times and you had to get 1 square from him before you could go to the bathroom. He never gave more than 1 square. Wife finally got fed up and left him when 1. He gave her bangs during an in-home haircut and 2. Their daughter was so traumatized by the toilet paper thing they couldn't potty train her. Also, he hated paying his divorce lawyer bill. He was also an old-fashioned mega Catholic who considered divorce a deadly sin. He viewed my whole job as an unnecessary and sinful expense. My mum had a friend with a horrible penny pinching father. As a child they took cold baths with 1 kettle full of hot water added, etc., etc. When he died and they went through the house, it was filled with hidden cash, bills behind the baseboards, bills in fake drain pipes. Needless to say he was severely mentally ill. I worked as a paralegal for a divorce lawyer. Case analysis was one of my main responsibilities. I crap you not. A recently married couple of 2 years broke it off because the husband would not stop feeding the dog. The dog got outrageously fat. Apparently she saw connection between the dog and future children. It's always so sad when people overfeed animals. The dog will always be happy to get treats, and I think the tiny instances of validation and affection a person gets because of it are enough for them to ignore what they're doing to the poor animal. It definitely does suggest the person in question is irresponsible when it comes to other living creatures that depend on him to keep them safe. I am a lawyer that handles quite a few divorces, among other things, and I've seen all sorts of reasons for marriages ending. The only thing that is consistently true and relevant to this question is that it is never for just one reason, and it is never one-sided. In fact, I've started telling potential clients in our initial interview that I am well aware that I am going to uncover some dirt on my client in the process, not to scare them, but to put their mind to ease that I've seen worse. The fact that you haven't been 100% an angel up to this point doesn't scare me, and I'd rather find out about it from my client beforehand than later on from their spouse at the worst possible moment. All this is just to say that when you hear about people divorcing over one stupid argument or mistake, usually that's just the straw that broke the camel's back. That said, some of the lighter straws I've seen include a guy who is 100% convinced that his wife, our client, is actually a lesbian in love with his sister and just using him as a cover. But he also claims she is having sex with me to pay for her legal fees, and with every male whose phone number is in her call history. A woman who is divorcing my client because he was too sad after his father died last year. My client had to break down her door to get his father's ashes a few weeks after he left the house, and she refused to let him back in or give them to him. And a woman who claims my client was emotionally abusive towards her because he refused to yell at her and sat in silence ignoring her when she screamed at him. He has this recorded, time-stamped for the dates and times she insists the incidents occurred, and she's listened to them and his complete silence as she goes on tirades and insists this proves her point that he was emotionally distant and abusive. Not the most outrageous, but I had a client incur about 20 additional hours of billable hours because he and his ex-wife were battling and went to trial over their Star Wars collection. This was the only issue at trial. They were able to work out custody, child support, the house, but the Star Wars collection went to trial. The judge ended up splitting it in the most asholish way possible, basically giving each side half of what they wanted and then mixing and matching everything else and breaking up collections. When speaking about it at a conference, The judge admitted she did it because if they were going to act like children, she would treat them like children. The thing is, the value of this collection was over $100k, so hardly kids stuff. Neither side had it in them to appeal, nor was the case law on either side given judicial discretion in property distribution. You have been visited by the cook dog comment without food there is no paradise so that you never burn the stakes. If you are new to the channel I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.